Hello, everyone. First, before I start, I just want to do a quick apology. It took me 2 weeks to get the USB. It didn't work out as I wanted. It was a terabyte of storage, but it was way too slow. And then after that, I've been setting up new roadmaps. I've been very busy with work, and I went on a little vacation, so I haven't been able to get videos out, but I promise they will be consistent now. So today, I finally connected a Windows 11 workstation to the Active Directory environment I've been building. This was quite the long process. It took me 2 days now, just because the download of the VM was just so bad. But I created the client. I fixed the DNS problem after that. I located the domain controller through Active Directory service records. I joined the client to the domain. I tested a domain user login and then I inspected Kerberos authentication. And now the lab doesn't feel like, oh, I have this one isolated server. Now it feels more like an actual enterprise environment. So, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to my cybersecurity journey. For those who are new, I'm continuing to study cybersecurity every day, and I'm building the practical skills, projects, and experience I need to become job ready. So, for these 2 days, 25 and 26, my main goal was to add a Windows 11 client to my Active Directory lab and prove that the client could communicate with the domain controller, discover the domain, and authenticate a domain user. So, before beginning this part of the lab, I already had a healthy domain controller. I had Active Directory installed, DNS working, OUs, users, global groups, domain local groups, AGDLP based permissions, department folders, and initial NTFS permissions. And if you want to see me doing those, I recommend watching the previous two videos in the series. And then the next question was, how would an employee actually use this environment? And then, so to do that, well, I need the client workstation. So the first step was creating the Windows 11 virtual machine. This is representing an employee workstation inside an organization. And after installing Windows, I renamed the machine. You can see it with this command here. So let me actually start this up in the background while I'm recording. So I renamed the computer using this command, and after the restart, I love to verify things now after the one issue we had in a previous episode. So I used hostname and who am I, and then the results worked. So hostname should return the hostname of the PC, which is client 01, and who am I? Well, I'm on the account admin PC, and the PC is client 01. So at this point, admin PC is still a local account and it's stored directly on the Windows 11 machine. And the client had not joined the domain yet. Okay, so you can see here that that is the one user. Okay, admin PC, just logging in there real quick. Okay, so oh, me. Okay, guess we're just gonna have to log on to her for now. So next, the next command I ran was ipconfig/all, and this is to inspect the network configuration, just get an idea because it was a new Windows 11 virtual machine, and I was inspecting IPv4 address, DNS server, default gateway, the status of the DHCP, and the network adapter. And then after that, I tested whether the Windows client could communicate with my domain controller. So obviously to do that, I just pinged the domain controller using the IP address. That worked. And then I pinged it using its host name. That also worked. So this basically showed that the two virtual machines could communicate over the network. However, I still needed to test whether the client could properly discover the Active Directory domain. So that's where I used NSLOOKUP, and my domain name is kevinlab.local if you're new here. Let me make sure both of these are online and working good. So I just need to get onto the server now. 1 second to log in. There we go. So that lookup failed when I did NSLOOKUP right here. And just as a reminder for NSLOOKUP, it asks a DNS server to resolve a name. And in this case, I was asking what IP address belongs to kevinlab.local. So the problem is the Windows 11 client was using my home router as the DNS server instead of the Windows Server domain controller. and Active Directory heavily relies on DNS. A public DNS server or home router is not going to know where the private Active Directory services inside kevinlab.local are located. So to fix this, I just opened the network adapter using Windows Run, the Windows plus R, and then I went into ncpa.cpo. Once you get there, you right click. It should be like Ethernet 0. You right click on it, and then you select Properties. You double click Internet Protocol version 4, and then don't mess with the IP address. But for the DNS server addresses, you need to click preferred DNS server and set that to the Windows Server IP, because and then you'll leave alternate DNS server blank, and then after that I had to clear the old DNS information, so I ran ipconfig flush DNS and then ipconfig register DNS. The first command clears the old DNS, and then the second will ask the client to register its DNS information again. And then now we're going to run ns lookup now. So can it tell me what IP address belongs to kevinlab.local? And this time it actually worked. So once we got here, I realized, okay, it's working. Let's create a baseline snapshot. And I actually need to make a snapshot for let me remind myself here. Create new snapshot. So I need to put a snapshot here because it's just a clean restore point. If I mess anything up, I have that option to go back. So yeah, that's why I made the snapshot. If I, break the client later, if I'm like configuring group policy, security tools, logging, if I attack it, I can just return back there. So next, I went over some core concepts, just some review. What is a domain controller? Well, a domain controller is a server. Sorry, I'm just going to go through these really quickly for those that are following along with the series. You can skip through this. It'll be like a minute or two if you don't want to listen to this. But a domain controller is a server that manages an organization's Windows domain. So in my lab, the Windows Server Virtual Machine is the domain controller from my domain, which is kevinlab.local. It will manage user accounts, password information, domain joined computers, security groups, group policy, blah, blah, blah. A client, simple, we'll keep this very short. Computer that uses services provided by the server, and the Windows 11 VM is the client. Authentication versus authorization. I sum these up very simply. Authentication, who are you? Authorization, what are you allowed to do? Don't go past that. Simple, just do those. And then the next question, why does a client use the domain controller for DNS? And this is actually important. So Active Directory uses DNS for more than just normal hostname resolution. The client has to locate specific Active Directory services, and that includes domain controllers and LDAP services. And then after that, why do companies centralize authentication? Well, without that, the administrators could be forced to create and remove separate local accounts on hundreds of individual machines, and that would become difficult to manage, difficult to audit, and difficult to secure. So a domain allows identity and access to be managed centrally. After this, I wanted to check VMware tools, and I use this command to see, and I have the error action silently continue, so it's not going to give us the error. It's just going to keep going with no output, and nothing appeared, so obviously had to attempt to fix this. VMware tools is just really useful for virtual hardware drivers, the display behavior, network integration, and VM performance. And I completed the fix. All I had to do was restart the machine and finish the download. So now it is set there. So as I like to do, we like to verify things, and the next thing we did was verifying the Active Directory service discovery. So I wanted to, prove that the client could locate the actual Active Directory services. So there's this very long command here, ns lookup, type equals srv underscore ldap dot underscore tcp dot dc dot underscore msdcs dot kevinlab.local. Might be a lot. I will break it down because that command looks very, very, very complicated. So type equal srv, it tells it to look for a service record instead of a basic home name record, which is what nslookup does by default. And an SRV record will identify information such as which service is available, what server provides it, what port it uses, and the priority and weight. The LDAP means I'm looking for the LDAP service. And as a refresher, LDAP is used by clients, and it will communicate with Active Directory and search directory information. TCP means the LDAP services available over TCP. DC means looking for domain controller. MSDCS, that refers to Microsoft Domain Controller Services, and it's a special DNS area used by Active Directory. So, in simpler terms, this whole command is basically saying which domain controller provides LDAP services for this domain. And then the output identified SRV slash dc01.kevinlab.local. And that meant the client could successfully, locate the domain controller through Active Directory DNS records, which is good. Then after that, another command that's much easier on the eyes, nltest. This is basically asking Windows to locate a domain controller for Kevin Lab local and display information about it. Another refresher. So nltest is just used to test and troubleshoot domain controllers, domain discovery, domain trust relationships, and secure channels. And the output displayed the domain controller name, the domain controller address, the domain name, forest name, and flags, which I have here if you'd like to read. You can see the name of the domain controller there. That's the most important one, I think. And finally, it's time for the big step of the day or the 2 days, joining the client 01 to the domain. So now we're ready to join it to the Windows 11. We're ready to join the Windows 11 client to the domain. So we use this command right here, add computer. The domain name is kevinlab.local. The credential is here, and then we want the restart option. When you do this command, a credential window appears, and after I entered the correct credentials, the client restarted. So before this step, client 01 was an independent Windows computer, but after this, it's now a trusted computer object inside my domain. So the domain controller can now recognize and manage that computer itself. So obviously, you know what we're going to do? We're going to prove that it worked. So I logged in using the local admin account. The Windows, I still want to see if I can sign into the local admin account, or is this something I need to fix? Because it's gonna sign in. How do I sign in? That should work. Okay, that is the admin account. Finally, I think it's gonna do some corny stuff with the welcome and all. It's all good. But so after the restart, um, I logged in using the local admin account, which I just logged into, and the Windows login screen now includes an option for other user. And that was pretty much the first visible indication that the machine recognized the domain authentication. And so to actually verify that, we ran this command here, get CIM instance win32 computer system. Then we're selecting objects, name, domain, and part of name. And the output showed that the name, client01, belongs to domain, and it's true. So that Boolean value lets us know. So we successfully joined, and after that, we want to move it into the correct OU. So let's get the Windows server open. O is going to do this. Annoying, but all good because we're idle for a bit. So on the domain controller, you go to manage. Well, no, you go to server manager, then you go to tools, Active Directory users and computers, and by default, the new computer we added, so client 01, it would be in this computers folder, right? But I moved it into Kevin Lab and then into workstations, and it's now in here. And this is important because this default computers container, it's not ideal for targeted group policy management. And when you place workstations into a proper OU, organizational unit, the administrators can apply policies specifically to employee endpoints. And then after that, we verified the new location using this command, get AD computer, client A1, and then name and distinguish name. And that will just basically verify it. So it's a command you can use with PowerShell to do the verification there. And then I want to log in as a domain user on this. So as you saw, we're now on the local um, person, right? We're on the local account, which is admin PC. But if we sign out, we wanted to test the centralized authentication. So I signed out of the local account and I logged into the client using the domain user Alice HR, which is AHR. That's her username. And then her password, I'll enter that there. And this was Alice's first time, logging in on the workstation. So Windows displayed the normal first time setup screen, which is like, hi, getting things ready for you. This might take a few minutes. But once the desktop loaded, I ran the commands who am I and hostname. And this basically confirmed that, okay, I'm using Alice's domain on client 01 now because who am I? It said AHR, and then the host name. Well, the host name was client 01, and who am I was client 01/AHR. So next, we wanted to identify the authenticating domain controller. Ran this here, and then it returned SRVDCO1, which is our domain controller. So it basically shows which domain controller handled the user logon. And then instead of Windows checking a local account database on client 01, the workstation communicated with SRVDCO1 to authenticate the domain identity. After that, I did a little bit of diving into this, not too much yet. I wanted to inspect the Kerberos tickets, so I ran the command klist. And this displays Kerberos tickets stored in the current session for the user. And I looked for a ticket associated with KRB TGT KevinLab.local. And that's what I've talked about before. It's the Kerberos ticket granting ticket. It's basically evidence that, hey, this domain user authenticated through Kerberos and it can request additional service tickets when accessing domain resources. This is the last part. So I wanted to review applied policy information. I did it using gp_result /r. And I haven't created custom group policy objects yet, but this command still displayed useful information about like the current user, the current computer, domain membership, and applied policy information. And then this prepares the lab for the next stage where I will begin creating and testing custom group policies, which is going to be pretty cool. So that's basically what I completed during days 25 and 26. And the next step is basically testing authorization. So authentication is what we pretty much did. Now we need to test authorization. So I created users, I created groups, department folders, and permissions earlier in the lab. And now I basically need to verify that the users can access the resources they're supposed to access and are denied access to everything else. So I'll give you a little sneak peek of this. If we try and go on to Alice and run PowerShell as an admin, watch what happens. Oh, see, now you need to enter it. So I'm going to enter my password. Alice HR can't do it because she shouldn't have access to that. So this was definitely an important step in the journey. The lab now has both sides. It has the domain controller and the employee side. Like, oh, hey, I'm the regular guy walking into the office for work. Let me log onto my computer. And from here, I can begin generally generating real authentication events. I'm going to test a bunch of file permissions. I'm going to apply group policy. Eventually gonna install sysmon and start sending the logs into an SIEM, and then we're gonna be simulating and detecting Active Directory attacks. What kind of sucks is that my license is only valid for 90 days, so and this one's valid for 145, I think. So if anyone knows any workarounds around these, I'm gonna have to set up new environments sometime soon when I figure them out. So if you could leave it in the comments any solutions to this, otherwise I'm gonna have to do some research. But I want to thank everyone for watching. This is days 25 and 26 of building my cybersecurity skills until I become job ready, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.